Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to go over Python classes. Now, classes are in the basically the biggest buzzword for object-oriented programming. They are the most basic and the most probably used object-oriented programming buzzwords out there. You can find in many programming languages. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. The scenario for this is basically going to be dice. Imagine that we're going to be using we're going to be creating an object dice with the parameters of the dice, like for example the number of sides it has and the number of players who are going to use the dice. We're going to pass that onto the object as we call it. So the dice can be a different set of dice that we give it, rather than having to rewrite the dice for every different type of dice that we can make. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, as you have noticed, I'm using dice.py, and you may have seen this file earlier in my earlier videos, and that's fine and all. I am going to still be using the terminal. However, I'm only going to be using the terminal for the execution of dice.py, not necessarily writing the code. So that's why we're starting here. Now, for that, let's go ahead and get started. Now, for a dice, there's a few things. There's obviously the number of sides. So let's go ahead and make the number of sides of dice. So we'll call it dice sides is equal to, well, we play Ludo from where I'm from with dice, so I'm going to say the number of dice sides is going to be 6 because there's a 6-sided die, and each side is a number. So the other thing that you have to do with the dice is you have to roll it, and it generates a random number for the dice. So we have to import that. And remember, this isn't built onto into Python. You can import it. It does come with Python, but if you were to always have it in running Python, that would make running Python incredibly heavy. So you have to import random. And then we're going to use random to generate the random number. So we're also going to have the number of players. And instead of the number of players, let's go ahead and use the names of the players. And I'm just going to make generic names: me, my brother, my sister, so on and so on. So dice players, and let's make it into a list. So there's going to be me, obviously. There's going to be my wife. There's going to be my dad, my mom, my brother, and my sister. Okay, so there's obviously 6 players in this game, right? So now, actually, instead of doing that, let's go ahead and comment that out. We'll use that code as part of the execution. Let's go ahead and create dice. So class dice. Now, unlike in a function, so you have these parentheses, and this wouldn't be a proper function name if that's uppercase. We have these parentheses where you send the parameters. You can still send parameters into a dice, but it cannot be in the parentheses of the class. If you were to use parentheses up here, it's not to pass parameters, as you just said. It's for inheritance, and this is foreshadowing to a future video where we explain inheritance. Inheritance is basically you're taking the methods of another class and inheriting it into this one. And I'm going to explain what a method is in just a moment after we've written one out. Now, to pass in the parameters into a class or an object, you have to write it in the init method. So let's say self, and I'll explain what self is in a second. And we're going to have the sides of the dice, and that's going to be type int. And then we're going to have the players of the dice, and that's going to be type list. And then from there, we're going to say self.sides is equal to sides, and then self.players is equal to players. Now, what I'm doing here is there's going to be another method for the action role. And the action role can also take parameters, but we want it to be able to inherit from the class. We don't want to be able to pass parameters directly into the action from the outside, directly into the method. If we were to do that, then we're just using it as a function. We're not using it as an object, because we should only be able to create the object with the parameters that we define, which is this dice, which is going to have 6 sides and the number of players. We create that once, and then we do whatever we want with the dice. We roll it, we break it, whatever we write in this code. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and continue. So, as I've said, we're going to go ahead and create the action or method called roll. And this is where we can pass parameters, but we're not going to pass these sides and player parameters. We're going to go ahead and pass in self, because self.sides is equal to sides, and then self.players is equal to players. Now this self is a type object, which then gets inherited into this role because of this parameter name. So whatever we pass into sides becomes self.sides, and then whatever is in self.sides can be accessed in role, in the role method. So let's go ahead and continue here where we say that, let's go ahead. I want to be able to return actually a dictionary. And the idea is that, you know, you're going to have a dictionary with the player's name as a key and what they rolled as on the dice. So let's name it player rolls is equal to an empty dictionary, right? And then for player in self.players, let's say that player rolls, and then player is equal to random.randint between the numbers of 1 and it's a 6, right? So, but we're gonna say sides, and then we're gonna, after it goes through there, we're gonna return player rolls. Now what's happening here? So this is the code that we'll be using to declare this object. So what's going to be happening is that as it goes through this list, it's going to be doing a random roll, which then gets assigned to this dictionary, right? So you're gonna have me. You're gonna have key me in this dictionary, and then it's gonna be a number with whatever I rolled. My wife, my dad, my mom, my brother, my sister, and so on and so on. And then that dictionary is gonna get filled up, and then that's what gets returned to whatever we assign the value object to. Now, let's go ahead and get started. So I'll be using this code for the actually creating the object. So let's go ahead. Oh, I made a mistake. There's an error. Thank you, linter. It's supposed to be self.sides, not sides. Good catch. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I'll be taking this, and then let's go to our terminal. We'll bring this up. I can't bring this up anymore. Are you kidding me? Oh, there we go. All right. As you can see, I already tried it. So be Python import dice, and then let's say that Ludo dice is equal to dice. Oh, I forgot. Yeah. Ludo dice is equal to dice.dice. So this is the file, dice.py, and then this is the class that's in there. If you need to see it, let me see if I can bring it back down. So dice.py, and then the actual class name dice. That's what we're doing. So let's leave it like right here in case we need to bring that up just a tiny bit. All right, so, oops, too many there. Ludo dice should work. Great, it works. And then we can do Ludo dice dot. Now, the reason why players shows up here is because we actually assigned the dice players, and we also assigned the sides. If we were to say players is whatever we assigned the list in players, and then that's what it returns. So basically it returns a parameter that we passed it. However, if you looked, there's also roll. This is the method. It appears in BPython for whatever reason. It appears as a method that you can call, and technically it is a method that you can call if you want to find out what's been passed into the parameter for the object. Now, in terms of polymorphism, where the parameter can change, where the object parameter can change depending on what's been done with an action, you might sometimes need to do this because let's say that, oh, you did sides and then all of a sudden the dice broke and then now you have one less side than what it was, and then that gets inside into self, but the programmer who's using the object doesn't actually know that quite just yet, and so he or she can check up on it after potentially just running the parameter call running the method call to get the parameter. So we're gonna do dice.roll, and all that does is just gets us our random number, and there it is. That's exactly what we're looking for. So I rolled a 2, my wife rolled a 4, my dad rolled a 1, my mom rolled a 2, my brother rolled a 2, my sister rolled a 5. And we can do this over and over and over and over again. As you can see, 6 is the inclusive number between 1 and 6 when we declared it. So it is indeed included on both sides when we declared it here, dice.sides here, or dice sides, sorry. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. So now I can be like, oh, look, we don't actually have a dice to play Ludo, but we could still play Ludo in this case, right? Or whatever the heck you're playing, Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever else might use dice, or craps for if you are into gambling, which I don't actually endorse because, well, one, I'm religious and gambling's illegal, and yeah. So, but if you don't have a dice, there's a dice. All you need is a laptop, and you can just say, look, we made a dice, and we gave it the number of players. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4 lines for the execution, and then maybe 10, 12, 13 lines of code, 14, 16 lines of code, not including this white spaces. So 10 lines of code total, maybe, perhaps. Yeah, there you go. You have dice now. Just use that. In the next video, I might go into recursion with it, which is not specifically class specific. It might be more into a function specific, but I'll go into recursion, and then eventually down the line, I'll go into polymorphism and so on. But I may I'm going to start with recursion, and then from there on, we'll go into decorators and more Pythonic stuff. And then eventually going down the line to polymorphism, and then from there on, that's where this course will end. I'm not going to go too into Python into programming because the object of this particular playlist was to teach Python, and I have done just that. I may do more Python challenge videos where that is actually in the plans. I'm going to do like challenge videos from like code fights and whatnot, to where they have a challenge for you, and then you have to solve the problem with your Python code. That will be eventually coming down the line, but that will be the end. Like, it'll be the end of it from there on. And then after these videos, there'll be more DevOps related stuff like Vault, perhaps, and even into Kubernetes. But there will also be programming related stuff like Golang and so on. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good one. Bye.